I'm making these videos mostly for myself to see how I progress over the next year. And I'm really trying to adopt the attitude of embodying my manic traits and bringing my best self that I can possibly bring to each and every moment. And by doing that, I'm hoping that it will reinforce that in my nervous system, and eventually I will just be that which I want to be. And I recently watched Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on body language, and she talks about fake it until you become it. And to me, the process I'm doing right now is sort of like faking it until I become it. But one of the advantages of experiencing a bipolar mania is that I've already experienced myself as the it that I want to become. So I feel like I have a little bit of an unfair advantage. I kind of know where I'm aiming for. I've been that way already, and maybe it's not something I experience in my daily life, but I definitely have a trace of it within me that I can use as a blueprint and a pattern to repattern myself through my daily life until it is neuroplastically changed and actually embedded in my neurology and not just in my manic experience and imagination. A lot of times, mental health struggles are seen as a challenge, and they definitely are, but the challenge is seen as something to be avoided and feared and managed. And while there is definitely an element of that, I feel like the experience can also be used as an agent and an element of change and growth. So I've seen a lot of traits in myself that I don't want to be like. And I've also seen a lot that I potentially would like to be more like in my daily life. And in that way, my experience is like education for myself, about myself. And even though a lot of those experiences, I couldn't help it because I had no control over it, doesn't mean it's not a source of information. Just like dreams, we don't necessarily control our dreams, except for those who do lucid dreaming. But if we don't control our dreams and we don't control our mania and psychosis, doesn't mean we can't learn from our dreams. And doesn't mean we can't learn from mania and psychosis instead of just focusing on, well, how can I avoid it? Because it's not really avoidable. It's something that oftentimes comes back. For me, in my bipolar disorder experience, I have had 3 relapses, as they're called, and that's happened all within the last year and a half. And each time I've had a relapse, I've actually learned a lot. And I wouldn't necessarily think I wish I'll never relapse again. And even though right now I'm feeling like, okay, I think I'm done with those relapse experiences, I think I've gotten a lot of information, I still could have a relapse. Right now, it seems like I'm doing quite well, but that could change, and it could change tomorrow, and it could change in a year, it could change in a few months. Knowing that means that I still have to live today as I want to be, and more recently, I've been considering moving towards embodying my manic self as opposed to just sitting around and not doing anything proactive. And to me, it's not about trying to be my manic self or thinking, oh, I'm bad because I can't be that best version of me that I am. It's more about unlearning and seeing the things that I do in my life that aren't a part of that than really pretending to be that. And so if negativity isn't a part of that, it's just, okay, well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to be negative. And that sounds a lot easier than it is, perhaps. And one of the ways that I've been able to recently not focus on negativity is by asking myself empowering questions instead. So I have a list right now of probably 130 questions, and I read through them casually, and just by doing that, it makes my mind look for the answers or look outward for those things. And in that way, it's hard to focus on the negativity, because negativity is just thoughts. It's thinking about something, but it's not really how things are. It's focusing on the negative thinking and the negative thoughts. But those thoughts don't actually really apply to reality. Reality would be closer to, I'm sitting here as a body in space and time. It's pretty neutral. And I could go to the negative side by thinking negative thoughts, or I could go to a more life-affirming way of not necessarily thinking positive, but by asking questions, it's actually in line with our natural curiosity as human beings. So as children, we're very curious, and that's how we learn. If we weren't curious about anything, we wouldn't try things and we wouldn't figure out reality. Well, to me, we lose that. And if we can get it back by starting to ask questions again, it's not about positive thinking. It's about being naturally curious, which is just a human trait. It's just, we're actually wired that way. And our wiring gets hijacked for all these negative thoughts and these circular repetitive thoughts, when really it's more about asking questions and looking at the vast expanse of possibility out there in the panoramic view that we have. But we spend so much time focusing on the inner stuff that's going on, that's negative, and we miss life. We miss what's actually happening. So in this way, I can be more creative, I can look outwards, I can perceive. This is a way to activate our inner placebo effect and our inner healing mechanism. And it's a way to look at things differently. So if we don't look at things differently, things aren't going to change, because we're not going to see anything new and act on it. If we're always seeing the same repetitive thoughts, we're not going to see anything new and act on it. So it's really important to actually change the way we see first. There's a great quote that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's very true. If I'm focused on my inner negative monologue and I'm looking around, I'm probably not really seeing anything. But if I'm asking myself questions, or if I asked myself questions earlier in the day, like, what beauty can I see today? Well, then I might just notice a flower, or I might notice an animal. And that gives a completely different feeling in the body than being focused on the inner monologue. And the inner monologue usually has something to do with yesterday, or 1,000 yesterdays, or tomorrow, or 1,000 futures that are possible. By looking and actually perceiving something outside based on a question, one is actually brought into the present moment. So it's a way to be more present and bring more presence into the body, and spending less time up in the head. I want to put another weird idea out there, and that is that mental health crisis is actually not a problem. It's a solution. It's a solution to life being maybe off track in a way, going too far away from who we truly are. And then we have a crisis and all this scary stuff happens, or terrible suffering and terrible stuff, and we think, wow, that means that's the end of life as we know it. Well, it's not the end. It just means that it's a catharsis, and all this stuff came bubbling up to the surface of our awareness, like, wow, all that was inside of me, all that was, I was dragging all that around. And now by seeing it, and also losing so many elements of one's life, it's easier to actually recreate something new. And that's the important part, is recreating something new and rediscovering something that perhaps before we weren't aware of. So in mental health crisis, in my experience, it was like the mind came in and tore up my whole life. I was given a mental health diagnosis. I was medicalized, psychoeducated, and stigmatized and told how my life was going to be. Now, my current thinking is, why not take elements of my experience and use my mind as a power over the medical system? So mind over the medical system. And one of the ways I was able to experience that was by, in psych ward, I would eat less food, and I feel like that gave my body a chance to process more of the toxic substances that they were giving me. And so I had to do that. I had to choose to eat less food, and I found it helpful.